motion versus action, how much motion there is when people think they're actually, I don't want to, throw anybody under the bus, but how much we've paid people just to move things around.
I don't look at it. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, I think that's the challenge that any employer faces. I only look at it from my point of view as that's kind of my own operational stuff that I have to deal with and or you have to deal with. I look at it, where am I in being in motion as opposed to being in action. So if back to paying people to do it, that's on me. I've got the wrong people or I hired the wrong person. So for me, the conversation really is about what am I doing, and am I actually in motion or in action? So being aware of that, I think there's not so much an awareness of it as an understanding of it, so that at some point you do in fact quit sharpening the saw. You got to start cutting wood, and maybe the wood doesn't cut as fast as you want, or it's harder work than I should have sharpened the saw more, maybe. But at the end of the day, you're moving forward, and there's a lot of joy, I guess, or happiness that comes from making progress, and that's the key in that regard. So if you're wondering why you're maybe being unhappy, being frustrated, not achieving, are you really in motion, or are you really in action, or are you still in motion, fooling yourself into thinking you're in action? It's one thing to go to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So think about how many workshops you've done or we've done over the years and paid money to go and be taught by the best of the best, and then come home and we try to put things into productivity, into action right away.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case for everybody. There's that caffeine high that happens at the end of a workshop. And that's the motion piece. You can go to a Tony Robbins event and get super fired up and excited and 4 days of, all that stuff, and then come home and crash. And then nothing.
I don't know. You look at Tony, Tony has great results though. So, but if you have a stadium of 5,000, how many people are actually taking it and applying it? And I don't know the answer to that question. I know that in that conversation with Mark, we got into a discussion about some people come in and they want to be coached, but they're not coachable. They don't know how to be coached. So then that goes to a conversation that you and I have had around, we're coaches, not coaxes. If you're looking to be coaxed, you're probably not in the right space. If you're looking to be coached, or if you're looking to be coaxed, those are two different types of people that are there to support you. We're not interested in coaxing, and certainly we can give encouraging words, but if you're coachable, you start to take action. You start to apply, the guidance, and or you go through the discussion. You come to the awarenesses that you come through, and then you put in the correction. That really is what it's all about in that regard. So motion versus action. I went to the event this weekend. It cost me what it cost me. I look at that and go, okay, I need to 10x this number in order for me to get real value of it. So I'm inspired to take action. We went to the Vault event with Patrick and David. Spent paid a lot of money for that, but we both came back and we said, okay, how do we get a return on that investment? So we put things into action. So that's really what the kind of context of this particular discussion is about: motion versus action, consuming versus creating. They go together. Now, the final kind of segment I want to do in this is the champion's paradox. And I think, it takes a little bit to kind of weave this in, but it's all part of the same conversation, I think. In the case of the champion's paradox, we are using athletes as the example, but you have to consider that you've worked with many, many athletes that have spent a lifetime to go to an Olympics or go to a world, and literally they compete. And it's a weekend or a 4 or 5 day event, but ultimately they compete. They win a gold, they win a silver, they win a bronze, or they don't. But let's say they win a medal, and we've had these conversations before. What's on the other side of that medal? In other words, okay,
now what?
I got the medal. Now what? Yeah. It happens that fast. You've certainly had way more experience. Like I'm out of school talking about it, but I have had the experience where, you know, within 6 hours, you know, silver medalists are going, now what? What the hell? What's next? Right? It's like, hold on, you just spent years getting here. You got it. How
Right.
about
Well, that's the fantasy, right? Like you have to understand your why, and the why has to be bigger than winning the medal.
Mhm.
Because when you're standing at the top of the podium and you hear your national anthem, you know, come up, the flag is up there, you're singing, you got your hand on your heart, and everything that you've done to this point finally has come to fruition. And then there's the moment. The music stops, the flag comes down, you step off the podium, you stand there with your flowers and your medal, you skate around and you hug, hug, kiss, kiss. Next thing you know, they're pushing you off the ice. The door opens, the Zamboni comes out, they clean the ice, and then they're already into their what's next. And you're standing there going, what just happened? Now it's what? It's over? It's
Mhm.
over. And the thing is, you know, if we're not preparing ourselves as human beings, as business owners, as athletes for the what's next. So it's the other side of the medal. What's happening as you step down off the podium or you close the deal? It's the biggest deal of your life and you're super excited. And then what? So that's that caffeine high or that hook or that adrenaline that is going to drive you forward. But the truth is, sometimes you get to a point where it's over. And
Mhm.
who are you being if you're no longer standing on the top of the podium and you spend the last 12 years, 15, 16, 2 decades building that moment and then it's over? And that's what nobody teaches you. And it's hilarious. You know, I've talked to athletes about that, you know, just casually sometimes. They go, well, I don't want to talk about that because, you know, that's superstitious, or I don't want to be negative. I go, it's not being negative. It's being pragmatic. It's being responsible, and it's being really connected to your why. Like, why are you doing this? Because you know it's going to be over. Well, I don't want to talk about that. And to me, that's when you see athletes doing comebacks because they were incomplete or they didn't have the experience they wanted to have in that moment, is because they didn't tell the full truth about the why, about what they're doing. And I know that I'm not popular in that realm because I want to have that conversation. I want to be the space that, whether it's athletes, business people, going, okay, so now you've completed that, you've achieved that. Who are you being? Are you still going to be that once you've won the medal, once you've closed the deal, once you've, you know, had the most important moment of your life? It's like we talked before, is that you spend all this time planning the wedding, but 5 seconds planning the marriage. Or you spend all this time talking about winning the Olympic medal, but not where you're going to live when you're no longer training in the city that you won the medal in. Like what is that conversation if we're not happy? Like for me as a coach, I think it's irresponsible to not have the conversation about that champion's paradox.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, you know, thing that we see, which goes back to, you know, so often the conversations that many people will, or the statement they'll make, I'll be happy when, I'll
Hmm.
be happy when. And there's a couple things around that. First off, you know, you're living into, so I'll be happy when I win a medal. So you should be probably really happy when you're training to win the medal too. If you're,
Yeah.
I'll be happy when we get this deal done and get it over the line. I get all that, but along the way, you have to be, are you being happy about the creating that you're doing, the action that you're taking, the difference that you're making, whatever that might be. So there's, that is the other side of it, is that to me, when you look at, if we use that champion's paradox, that medal kind of metaphor, if you will, is that you get it and then what's on the other side of it. And so first off, celebrate it 100%. And are you thinking about what's next, or is it just going to show up and then you're going to react to it? I think that's about what you're saying in this particular scenario. That's, I think, what you're talking about as well, is that, are you in fact looking beyond the future? And I guess some people don't want to, you know, some will say, I just need to get there and then I'll decide. And that's, I think, a reasonable thought process, you know, but that's a
100%.
decision. That's a decision.
It's totally a decision. And then, you know, the only thing is that, are you going to then turn around and make the whole journey wrong? You know, the people didn't support you properly. They didn't give you the right coaching, or all of a sudden they didn't have the conversation about helping you around your what's next. And that's the biggest thing I see is that disconnect between everybody's trying, their hardest to win and to be the best in the world at what they're doing. And then there's me over here going, and we have to talk about, where you're going to live after and how you're going to make a living. And if you're not winning prize money, what's that going to look like? Are you doing shows? So the paradox in that is that you don't want to pull them out of the moment in the sense that you need to focus. Like the training that it takes to be a world and Olympic champion is off the charts. Absolutely off the charts, that it takes the focus, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical training that it takes to be that. I get it. But I think when we're, think about our shift clients or the clients that we've got coming to Think Tank, like we're going to be having those conversations about who you're going to be when you're not this or something changes. Like in those moments, those coachable moments, those transitionary moments where we have to have the skills that we need to like link from who we were as a champion to who we're going to be just as a regular person. And to me, that's a very, very important conversation, and it's not easy to have.